All right, Monday Night Krueger Show. John Lund's in the house. John Lynch spoke today in West Palm Beach, Florida, at the site of the NFL owners' meetings. We got things to talk about. Jed talks tomorrow. Shanahan talks tomorrow. The draft is approaching. We're inside of a month. We got a lot to get to. Let's get to it right now. Welcome aboard. It's the Krueger Show, Monday night. Let's go. All right, there we go. Fire up the band. It's the Krueger Show on a Monday night. I hope everybody's having a great day. Happy the final day of March, March 31st. March, what happened to you? Just came and went. That was quick. Beware, tomorrow's April Fool's Day. Have your alert out. Don't get fooled.
Every year.
Tomorrow is the day. Don't get duped. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. Go say hi to Damon. Go say hi to Mary. Get some brisket. Get some brisket chili. Tell them the Krug sent you. I'm loving me some Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And as you can see on the bottom of the screen, we are also sponsored by our spring training sponsors, Claudaddy Arcades, for family-friendly entertainment. He's got 3 locations in Southern California. He's also got Fresno, Modesto. He's got a location coming in the Bay Area soon. Claudaddy Arcades is bringing family-friendly arcade fun to communities across California. Follow them on Instagram at claw_daddy_arcades and find a location near you. And we're also brought to you by LearnKey Upskill Academy. They're an online learning platform designed to get you job ready in 6 months or less. So maybe you just need a little extra training. It doesn't matter what field it is. Maybe it's IT, cybersecurity, marketing. Could be another high demand field. They offer over 30 different certification programs to help you take that next step in your professional career. They've been in business for 37 years. They've helped out over 200,000 students. They place lots and lots and lots of students with jobs on a regular basis. Good jobs, well-paying jobs. So if you're between jobs or underemployed, unemployed, or just want to, kind of up your game a little bit and you want some assistance, LearnKey Upskill Academy, check the link in the description. All the links for all of our sponsors are listed below. Thanks to all of them for being proud sponsors of the Krueger Show. All right, we're off and running on a Monday night, and today John Lynch talked to the media for the first time since he talked at the Combine about a month ago. And, the whole Dre Greenlaw thing was revisited, John. And it came out today that Lynch and Shanahan in the 11th hour flew to Dallas and tried to convince Dre to come back here. And it just didn't work out. Sounded like Dre wanted to move on. Sounded like maybe they bungled the whole thing. I mean, to be completely honest, if you were going to get on an airplane and fly to Dallas and up your offer significantly, and Matt Barrow said the final offer was quite a bit higher than the initial offer, why go through that? I mean, here, I guess my question is this, and this is an answer I know you don't have the answer to, but give me your best. Do the Niners want Dre Greenlaw back, or do the Niners want the Niner players to believe that they wanted Dre Greenlaw back and they really didn't want Dre Greenlaw back? What do you believe?
Well, from what I understand, what happened is you and I talked about this, and exactly what we said did happen, which is they thought coming off the Achilles injury that he was going to probably settle for a 1-year deal, and they had earmarked for him in the $8 to $9 million range over a year as a prove-it deal for a guy who only played 34 snaps last year. But what happened is you and I have talked about, those 3 linebackers signed right before the market opened, and all this, and the heavy petting all opened, and all of a sudden Dre Greenlaw had leverage. There were no other quarterbacks. Ernest Jones came off the board. Nick Bolton came off the board in Kansas City. So all of a sudden you're sitting there, and Dre Greenlaw is the number 1 linebacker in the market, and you've got a 1-year deal in the $8 to $9 million range for Dre Greenlaw. And all of a sudden Dre Greenlaw is getting courted by a number of different teams. Denver was the most aggressive suitor, obviously. Now 3-35 isn't what the contract is. It's 1-11.5. But the point is that we all know this. You like to feel love. And so they misread the market is what happened. They fly out there to try to John and Kyle try to fly out there and tell him how much they love him, but it's too late. All these other teams had shown him love. They misread the market. They undervalued him. And look, I thought the same thing, to be completely honest, and defend the 49ers. I didn't think he was going to get more than a 1-year make good deal coming off 34 snaps, but we all know how the NFL is. Everybody gets overpaid. So by that point, they could try to make it up, but his feelings were already hurt. And then as you said, and his dad said, and I think his dad's completely wrong in the analogy, but he said, go be MJ. Don't be Scottie Pippen, go be MJ. Well, if you were a backup quarterback, that would be an apt comparison. If you were Jordan Mason trying to get out of San Francisco behind Christian McCaffrey, but you can be Navarro Bowman to Patrick Willis. You can be the second linebacker and still go to the Hall of Fame. Remember the Steelers, Jack Ham, Jack Lambert. There are a lot of dual linebackers that go to the Hall of Fame. Dre Greenlaw is out there and can make as many plays as Fred Warner. I understand what his dad's saying, and I listened to my dad's advice for a lot of years, so I don't know how much influence that had, but apparently Dre Greenlaw wants to go be his own man, go be his own Fred Warner. So I think those combination of things led to it. But as you pointed out at the beginning, I think the 49ers read the market right, realize that Dre Greenlaw, even though 1 year coming off an Achilles does make logical sense, that's not the way that it's ever played. It's always monopoly money. It's always multiple years. Although, like I said, it's only a 1-year guarantee. But if they had come up with the right money, because those guys that I mentioned, Ernest Jones and Nick Bolton, signed contracts in the $13 to $15 million AAV, and there's Dre Greenlaw going, I'm as good or better than those guys. Now he's coming off the injury, but still, you had to have a double-digit contract offer for Dre Greenlaw. And starting as low as they did, I think that he was insulted. I think his side was insulted. And when teams started to come at him with deals that looked better, he decided mentally in his mind that he wasn't going back. And we've all done that, where you make a mental thing where you say, you know what, I'm done there. Yeah. And it's really hard to go back. And so I think that's exactly what happened.
Wow. So you're not blaming them though, huh? You're giving them a pass.
Let's put it like this, Krug. It's kind of like the Giants. When they don't get credit to me for going to Texas, they don't get credit to me. The Giants would be the best team in the world on the what ifs that they almost signed. I mean, it's great. This comes out and they tried and they did the best. And I guess it does show that they did want them and they weren't being completely cheap, but it does show that they misread the market. So what's worse, misreading the market to start, or do you give them a break because they went all the way to Texas and tried to get the guy when it was too late? It was too late and they misread the market. So they don't get credit for trying and hopping on a plane. If they wouldn't have misread the market in the first place, Dre Greenlaw would probably be there. And I think that the offseason would be totally different because, Krug, we've talked a ton about the guys that they missed, but they've all been replaced or are replaceable. If you kept Dre Greenlaw, sign Brock Purdy, which we're getting into what John Lynch said, keep Brandon Aiyuk, extend George Kittle, all of a sudden, all those things that happen in the offseason don't look so bad. To me, it's always been about missing out on Dre Greenlaw because he's the guy that's going to be toughest to replace of the group that you lost.
No question. I'm so torn on this one, man. I'm so torn. On one hand, I love Dre Greenlaw, and I think Dre Greenlaw is more than just another guy in the room. I think he's a tone-setting player. I can't give a player a higher mark than tone setter. To me, there's good players, there's great players, and there's tone setters. When you're a tone setter, you're one guy in a room of maybe 100 guys in training camp. That you set the tone. Like your presence alone sets the tone. They're very rare to have tone-setting players. Some teams have none, and it shows. And Dre Greenlaw is a tone setter, so it's just really, I really, really wanted him back, right? Mm-hmm. And but I also understand kind of where they're at, and there is no room in player personnel for any kind of sentimentality. I mean, there's just none. There's no room in football personnel for sentimentality. I mean, maybe the Warriors can be sentimental about Steph or something like that. Maybe a basketball team, maybe a baseball team. It's a final year of blah 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 here, whatever. Sentimental. Football, there is no room for that. So it's like you gotta have a contributing member. So and I do think Dre would have contributed, and I think the Niners kind of misread the thing. But I also believe it's out with the old, in with the new, and it's a great draft for linebackers, and I think it's going to be an amazing day 3 draft for linebackers. And if it was my plan, I would get a couple extra draft choices on day 3. In a trade back situation and make sure I draft my entire linebacking core in this draft on day 3, because there's so many good ones.
I think too, what has to happen is, because after the draft, there's some guys who are going to shake free from a team. You've got to have a linebacker as a catch-all. I know Devondre Campbell didn't work out, but a guy like Eric Kendricks, who you did have intended to sign here, then went to Dallas, is still out there. There's some guys. I'm not saying the talent is great. I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's not
right.
Kendricks is on that list, but
right,
like,
and
it's
not
CJ
Mosley is a guy
Mosley,
that he's
CJ
had a lot
Mosley.
of injuries. So, and he played for Saleh, but it's not a great list. But if teams obviously draft guys and release guys, there's going to be a linebacker out there. And I'm not saying that linebacker necessarily has to start. I just don't want to have to rely on a rookie to start next to Fred Warner. If there's a veteran out there that shakes free, that makes sense, I think that would be something that the 49ers should probably look at. Because to me, I just get nervous. And you're right, there's a lot of guys, but you and I have talked about this. A lot of college linebackers are really great moving forward. A lot of college linebackers have to learn to go backwards, and that's the league. And so when you have a rookie linebacker, they're just going to target you and see if you can play pass defense, because a lot of these guys can fill holes, can shed blocks, can make tackles, but can they deal with the passing game and the complexity of it? And all of a sudden you've got to cover a tight end or a back or a slot, a lot of crossing routes right in front of you, or if you're a rookie to test if you can tackle in space. All those kind of things are going to happen to a rookie linebacker to test him. And I remember, and you and I have had this conversation many times, you and I were standing right next to each other when the Niners drafted Reuben Foster, and everybody was excited for him. And man, moving forward in that first training camp, he's kicking ass. All of a sudden, Kyle Juszczyk gets into pass pro into the pass defense. And I just remember the first play, Kyle Juszczyk just cooks him. And then like the third string tight end just cooks him. And it's like, uh-oh, it's going to take a minute. And, we know what happened to Reuben off the field, and he didn't turn out to be great, but we were all excited at that point. And it just kind of takes a minute for guys to be able to play pass defense. I think Fred Warner was different because Fred Warner kind of played that star position at BYU, so he was more comfortable in space. But it takes these guys a little bit to get comfortable in space and to understand what teams are trying to do to them, because they're going to target them when they come into this league. So that's why you needed Dre Greenlaw, just to go back to your original point. I think that it should have been a bigger emphasis. But as you said, I can understand coming off an Achilles injury why they read the market the way they did. But it's going to be a tough replacement if they have to go with a rookie. I think that there are plenty of rookies here. It's just that they're going to go through some growing pains because they're going to get targeted by NFL offenses.
And there's a couple of Jets. I mean, CJ Mosley, if you want to go with an older player, Chaz Surratt, played for Robert Saleh. He's still out there. At 11, would you consider going linebacker? I mean, the two top linebackers, the inside guy from Alabama is Jihad Campbell. And he had a great workout and he was very productive. He's a little tall for an inside linebacker. I'll be completely honest. He's almost 6'4", which is a little tall for an inside linebacker, but he's a hell of a player. And then there's Swessinger from UCLA, Demetrius Knight from South Carolina. But then there's also Jalen Walker, who is a defensive end. But you know what? Mike Mayock the other day was saying he reminds him of the Cowboys, of what's the Cowboys?
Micah Parsons.
Micah Parsons. Yeah. He says he reminds him a lot of Micah Parsons. I see a lot of Micah Parsons. I also see a lot of Devin White. I think he's more of a stacked linebacker than Micah Parsons was. I think Micah Parsons has a little bit more strength than Jalen Walker. But what do you think? I mean, Jalen Walker is a special player. There's no question. There are some people that really believe that he's the Butkus Award winner. That goes to the nation's best linebacker. He was an incredible edge rusher. He's incredibly dynamic. His dad was a football player. He's a leader of their defense. He's a captain. Some people who watch him said, he kind of drifts in and out production-wise. Some of the criticism is like, hey, man, he's too small to be an edge rusher, and he doesn't have linebacker instincts. I think he does have linebacker instincts. I just think he's a little like fish out of water because he's played so much as an edge rusher. I think he's a super special player who closes space like nobody else almost. I'd be excited if they got Jalen Walker. But what do you think? Would you go Jihad Campbell or Jalen Walker at 11, or is that too early?
Yeah, I just think positional value, and you and I talk about this all the time, is, look, if there was Patrick Willis was taken at 11 in 2007. If there was a Patrick Willis, if there was a Luke Kuechly, if there was that kind of talent where I thought, this guy's going to play for 10 years, I don't see that, and I don't see the positional value, especially given how many needs they have at offensive line, defensive line, all these other places. they need a linebacker. There's no question. I think that they're going to have to get one maybe in the second round. Like you said, I think a lot of those guys beyond, Walker and Campbell, I think those guys are going to be gone. But other than that, when you're talking just pure off-ball linebackers, there's going to be a run on these guys in the second and third round. And I think that the 49ers are going to be in the middle of that. But I think, as we've talked about a lot, the trenches need a ton of work. And I think that offensive and defensive lines, although I did a mock the other day, and I really think that the worst case scenario is going to come true for the 49ers. And this is why I bring it back to what you said about linebackers. I'd love Mason Graham to fall. I'd love Membu to fall. I'd love Will Campbell to fall. But I think all three of those guys are going to be gone in the top 10. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there going, okay, what are we going to do here? Because what you're trying to do, you're not going to be at 11 a lot. You hope not. If you're the 49ers, John Lynch said something like that today. I don't want to be 6-11 again. So you've got to, as you've pointed out before, you've got to take a great player. So positional value, is linebacker a positional value like that? No. But if you think one of those guys, and we only know this, you got to sneak in there when you're in there and look at their board before that thing starts. You got to put on like a hat real low, and you're going to be next door. You just got to slip in there and see. But they may have that. They may have those guys that you just mentioned as really special talents, and they might take them there just because at 11 you don't want to be there a lot. So if that's a special talent, then you take them no matter what the positional value is. So maybe they do. Off the top of my head, I think they got to go offensive and defensive line. But I think at 11 they won't go defensive line just because it's so deep of a draft for defensive line. And then offensive line, like I said, I think those two tackles are special. I think they're a little bit ahead of Banks and those kind of guys. I don't think I would take Banks at 11. So if they think that, say, Walker, for example, like you said, who's kind of a hybrid type of a player, is that special an athlete or not special a player, then I think they might do it. But a pure off-ball linebacker, your Patrick Willis, your Luke Kuechly's, there's not one of those guys in this draft.
Tim Webb in the chat says maybe they re-signed Devondre Campbell.
Can you imagine? We've mended fences.
Timmy, good to see you, man.
We love Devondre. We love him. He's going to come back. Do you imagine the locker room? They would want to crush that guy's face.
And, of course, we know Tim Webb for years and years. All right. Brandon Aiyuk. I buried the lead. We titled the stream, Brandon Aiyuk trade ruled out. John Lynch ruled that out today. Really surprised me. I thought what he said a month ago indicated that they were desperate to reclaim that money and that they would trade Aiyuk at any cost, and I was wrong. They're going to go forward with Aiyuk. As far as how much he's going to play this year, that part we don't really know. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Woo. Anyway, we don't really know when he's going to play or how much he's going to play. And so I think, they said mid-season, but I'm thinking more like November. I think if you asked me when, set a date, if we were wagering on this, I'd pick like November 18th or something. It would not be early November. It would be like mid to middle of November, or maybe a slightly later than middle of November. I think he's going to be out a while. But he's back with the Niners, and he's not going anywhere. He's not going to be traded. They're going to pay him his $28 million bonus. But now the question turns from, okay, Ayuk's going to be here on the team. He's not going to be traded. Okay, so you're going to have Aiyuk, but he's not going to play. And he's probably not going to play for at least half the year, and I would think probably a good chunk of the year. And then realistically, come on. I mean, he's going to be a diminished player. He just tore out the Achilles. He just tore out the ACL, the MCL, the meniscus. I mean, he's going to be diminished. So you have a diminished Aiyuk probably returning in November, okay? You have Jacob Cowing, Ricky Pearsall, JJ. I like Isaiah Hodgins a little bit, but he's a possession guy. The Niners seem to be talking up Tariq Owens. I'll believe it when I see it.
He runs like a 4.8.
Yeah, I'm it's like it's a good story, but
I like
so what? So this all being said, don't the Niners, the Niners are not, if they were just taking this year off, going, you know what? Screw it. This is a 2-year thing. Fans, we're not competing this year.
Yeah, they're not doing that.
I get the feeling they're going to come out and be like, hey, man, we're trying to be competitive. So if you're trying to be competitive, you got to try to win. There's no way they're going to win if they don't get some help at receiver. So who's it going to be, John? They need a receiver. I'll throw out 3 names that are all very intriguing to me. One is Luther Burden. Now, Greg Cosell says he's the best deep threat in the draft. Greg says he's watched all the film on
Who
all these
throws
guys.
the ball deep? Does anybody throw the ball deep? I always think that's funny when people say that. Nobody throws it
Brock
deep.
Purdy has the best quarterback rating on deep balls in the league.
I know. I love that. I would love it if teams would throw the ball deep, because one of two things can happen. You either get a PI or you make a play. Now, you could get an interception. I understand that, but I think the league has become too dump off happy. I mean, I'd love to see.
And that's what this guy does,
though.
That's what this guy does. He does a lot of the short stuff, and he's a run after the catch guy. He's Cosell says that that the Missouri puts him in motion more than a lot of receivers are put in motion. They use a lot of motion with Luther Burden, who uses a lot of motion, Kyle Shanahan. So Luther Burden's an interesting name to me. Now, you'd have to probably trade back in round 1 and get him somewhere there, but he is pretty spectacular. The other name that's really intriguing to me is Tez Johnson. Now, I know Tez didn't run well for the stopwatch, but this guy lit up Penn State. I watched that game. He got 11 catches for 181 yards. They couldn't stay on the same television screen with him. And then he went to Mobile, and he lit it up in Mobile. Nobody could guard him in Mobile. He's just a freak. Now, I know he doesn't run his long speed shows 4.51, and at that size, 155 pounds, that's pretty small. But this guy's produced. I mean, big time production. So Tez is another name, and then the other third name is Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren is a great receiver. He's a great athlete. And maybe do you compensate for not having Aiyuk by drafting a guy like Tyler Warren and going heavy 12 personnel, not just, in the first month, but maybe throughout, and just kind of shift your deal from 21, 22 to a lot of 12. What do you think?
Well, it's possible only because Brock Bowers was so good for the Raiders last year that everybody's kind of, because of the recency bias, is going to think that's what he is. I don't know if that's what he is. If it is, then I think a lot of teams would pick him starting maybe with the Jets at 7. But the tight end group is so deep. As you look at the draft, and you know this as well as anybody else, that you look at the positional value, but you look at the depth. That's why I don't think they're going to D-line at number 11 unless like a Mason Graham slips, or they love Grant or something like that, somebody who's different. There's a lot of quick penetrating defensive tackles. There's a lot of big type of run stuffing defensive tackles. So I don't think they're going to go there. Same thing with Warren. I just think there's so many good tight ends in this draft, and what you're looking for is a complement to George Kittle, and eventually you're going to replace him, but he's so good right now that you're going to extend him. So I like Tyler Warren a lot. I don't know if they'd have the balls to take him at 11, especially given the depth at that position. And then as far as wide receivers go, I would be surprised if they went wide receiver in the first round for the second year in a row, because they've got to look and say, okay, we got to give Pearsall a chance. JJ is JJ. They signed Demarcus Robinson, who I don't love, but he's probably a third. He might be good enough until Aiyuk gets back. I don't disagree with you. I think that they probably need to address it. And after, like you said, after McMillan and Burden the third, there's nobody else really that's right there. So all of a sudden now you start looking into that second group. I like Noel, the kid from Iowa State. I told you I like Royals, the kid from Utah State.
Yeah.
There's a Larry Krueger special, and you're going to know who this guy is. And I put him in a mock draft, and everybody ripped me because he just doesn't have very good production, but he's about 6'5", and he's about 215, and he runs into 4.3s. The kid Thornton, Deontay Thornton from Tennessee. And I'm not saying you take him in the third round or fourth round, but I'm saying if he's sitting there in the sixth round, you got all those extra picks, seventh round. I know they have 3. I don't know that maybe he's going to be a seventh rounder, but the kid's got, the Al Davis measurables at like 6'5", 215, super fast. I think he got 56 balls in his career and only 26 last year. But I think he's just one of those guys that you take a flyer on. I'm not saying he's going to be ready next year. I'm simply saying that, yes, you've got to take a receiver, but are you going to take one for when you're screaming in the trenches for what they're screaming for? Are you going to take one for the second consecutive year in the first round? Because that's what it would take to get Luther Burden, or if McMillan possibly would fall to 11 because his 40 wasn't great or something like that. Would you really do that? Would you really take a receiver 2 years in a row?
I don't think I can. I really love Luther Burden. He's tough as hell.
Run after the catch, like you said, is really
he's St. Louis kid. He's nails. He's super tough. But no, I don't think I can.
It reminds me of the Lions. I would have PTSD for when I was working for the Detroit Lions, and they went Charles Rogers, Roy Williams, and Mike Williams in 3 consecutive years.
Yeah,
And
but then
that's a 3-yard in a cloud of dust city. And I was just, people were so pissed off. I mean, they
but
couldn't
if
even
they, but
see
John,
straight.
think about that one. That's a great example because if you had been scared away, you don't take Megatron.
Right. That's a good point. In a couple of years.
Right?
So that was 3, 4, and 5. And I
7.
think in 7 they took Calvin Johnson.
Right.
So
And they
yeah, you're right.
What if they had just been like, we're not
We're not
taking
taking.
her?
Yeah, that's a
You
good
know,
point.
you
Yeah.
could have fooled
Let
yourself
me
right
ask you
into
this, because
Jamarcus.
this is a big part of this equation. All right, so we know what JJ is. We know what Demarcus Robinson is. He's been long enough. I think it comes down to, if you're the Niners, like you said, Ayuk's not going to be ready till midseason, but you might be able to get by if Ricky Pearsall lives up to a first-round billing. Let's just say, for the sake of our conversation right now, that Ricky Pearsall is good. All right, that he's good. And then you have Robinson and JJ. So,
good.
I mean, that's what I'm asking you. Like, do you think, because if you think Ricky Pearsall is going to be good, then I don't think you have to go early for a pick. But I just don't know what Ricky Pearsall is.
I just think what I think is that Ricky Pearsall is a chain mover. Like, you're not going to be able to. He's a Puka Nacua in a different package, right? He's not going to run by you. Per se, but he's stop and start, body control, route running, hands, the whole deal. His feel with Purdy's going to be spectacular. I think he's going to be very hard to stop. But they need that dynamic guy.
Right.
So
the defense is say, okay, we got to move a safety over, because right now the problem is with those 3 guys we just mentioned. As much as Juwan Jennings makes plays, he just makes them because he's bigger. But there's nobody who a defense right now. Kittle is Kittle. That's different. McCaffrey's McCaffrey. But of their receiving core, straight wide receiver core, there's nobody where the defensive coordinator has to say, hey, we might want to bring a safety over the top, which then opens up other things for your team. That's where you miss Aiyuk, because when Ayuk's healthy and playing like he can play, he's a guy that you have to game plan for. I don't really have to game plan for any of the guys that are outside for the Niners, and that really hurts.
Yeah, and also Ayuk's got a huge catch radius, so I mean he can sky for balls, and So I'm looking at this draft. I don't like McMillan.
I don't either.
Golden runs really fast, and he's really intriguing.
Well, he's rocketing up draft boards, man. What
really
is that?
Good. He's really.
I mean, I like him, but I don't love him. Like, I don't know that I would take him in the first round. And all of a sudden, man, he's in all the mock drafts. They must be hearing something about him. Obviously,
no, his film's amazing. He's so good in and out of the breaks. He's very smooth, polished, and then he ran the great 40 time. Burden was the 5-star coming out of high school, right? He was the guy that he literally chose Missouri over Bama and Georgia, and and it was like a big deal. It was like, whoa, they got Luther Burden the third. So he's been like the chosen one. He's a major star. He's a super tough kid from a super rough town, right? He's from East St. Louis, and he's super tough. And he's like one of these guys, you can't hit him hard enough because he just pops right back up every single time. He's got a little bit of Steve Smith in him, but he's a vertical threat. I mean, this guy will, drive the safety in the middle, hold that safety in the middle of the field. The guy that they may go for if they're going receiver is Emeka Egbuka. I hope not, but Egbuka is the most polished guy. So he's like ready to contribute like right away. Like you could get Emeka Egbuka and he could produce for an NFL team week 1, running all the routes. He's a tremendous receiver. And he ran 4.48 at the Ohio State Pro Day in Columbus yesterday. He is going to probably go in the late first round. Jaden Higgins is a big-bodied receiver from Iowa State. A lot of people like him. He's very smooth. Trey Harris,
I like his teammate better.
I like his teammate better too. The guys that stand out to me in the group, I mean, I love Burden, but Trey Harris from Ole Miss to me stands out.
See, that's a guy you can get in the mid rounds, I think, too. See,
well,
that would appeal to me more.
Matt Miller yesterday thinks he's going in round 2. But Jack Betch from TCU has crazy route running and hands, and he's going to be a mid-round receiver that's really intriguing. Isaiah Bond from Texas is a
super
burner.
Fast.
I love Ty Felton from Maryland. Savion Williams from TCU is a Debo-like guy. Dante Thornton from Tennessee is a vertical threat. Arian Smith from Georgia is a super vertical threat. And then there's some late day 3 guys. Keandre Lambert-Smith started at Penn State, transferred to Auburn, ran in the 4.3s, and he had a pretty good year this year. He's pretty good. And the other guy I really kind of like is Zachary Franklin from Illinois. He
Yeah,
started at
big guy,
Texas San
right?
Antonio. And Jordan Watkins, another Ole Miss kid who's small, 5'11", 200 pounds, but he also ran 4.37. So they also talked to Rock Taylor from Memphis, who's a pretty good receiver. So they got to find themselves at least one receiver, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a superstar, but preferably it should be somebody who's got some vertical down the field speed, because they don't have that. They kind of lack that. They have the big physical JJ, receiver. They have the chain mover. They don't have they do have Cowing, but they can't really trust Cowing. I think they need another down the field receiver.
Yeah. Well, and plus, the thing is that they're missing, which made their offense so good for a long time, is they don't have the yak monster. Kittle's a good yak monster. McCaffrey is, but as far as the receivers go, JJ goes up and gets the ball, but with his 4.7 speed, I mean, he does it with power, but he's not great. Ricky Pearsall, we saw a little bit, especially in the Tampa game, so maybe he can give him a little bit of that. Demarcus Robinson isn't really that. So what I would be looking at is somebody who can give him the rack, the yak, the run after the catch ability that used to be such a major part of their offense. They just really don't have that without Brandon Aiyuk. They need to find somebody, and I'm not advocating they take somebody early. I think, like you said, there's a couple of receivers that are going the first round. I guess you're going to add Golden to that from Texas, who's really rocking it up boards lately. But after those three guys, I think beauty's going to be in the eye of the beholder, and it's the type of wide receiver that you're looking for. I would think the Niners, maybe with all their picks, fourth, fifth round type of a guy with some speed and some run after the catch ability.
A lot of people who like the Niners this year to have a good year are projecting Christian McCaffrey is going to be back, and he's going to be as good as new, and the 49ers are going to ride him all the way to the playoffs. Okay, I'm with you. I like the story. But what if it doesn't happen? Right? What if it doesn't happen? If he's not ready to come back, or if he comes back and gets hurt and goes away real quickly, what are the Niners going to do? Is the season go up in smoke? How badly do they need a running back? And people are asking, it's a great group of running backs, and everybody's trying to guess along with the Niners. The Niners had the fourth best odds of any team in the league to draft Ashton Genty. I couldn't believe that. I was like, whoa, That's shocking to me. There's a lot of Niner fans out there that are, telling me, oh, they need to draft Cameron Scatabo because he's a Bay Area guy, Sacramento guy, went to Sac State. That's a name that I keep hearing. I would say this. You got to remember, I think I've done all my sleuth due diligence. I think I've figured out who the Niner running back is. Tell me if you believe this. What do the Niners want in their running backs?
One cut and go, tough.
They want
hard running.
They generally want speed, right? They want guys who can run.
They want combo. They want speed, power.
They definitely want speed. They also like to throw the ball to their backs. So they ideally, it would be nice if you could catch it out of the backfield. And then they were big on Elijah Mitchell. So what does that tell you? They really respect guys who don't fumble the ball. They don't want guys who fumble. Ashton Genty, 12 fumbles in 830 touches in college football.
I can save everybody a lot of time. They're not drafting him. They're not
drafting him.
Because the thing is,
Tootin, 10 fumbles. Raheem Sanders, 12 fumbles. There's a lot of people that say that Jaden Blue from Texas, John, is their
speed.
Is the back that fits them. In 270 career touches, Jaden Blue has 9 fumbles.
Yeah, they're not drafting him.
Here's the guy that I think they're going to draft. And I do think they're going to draft a running back early, like round 2 or maybe late in round 2 or possibly early in round 3.
No, not round 3. Can't draft a running back in round 3. The Niners cannot do that. Not anymore. Ty Davis Price.
I see a running back in the Niners' future. It's Travion Henderson. Here's why. 666 career touches, 1 fumble. He's considered to be an elite blocking back, which Bobby T is going to love. And he can catch the football. So No, he doesn't fumble. He's a hell of a blocker. He can catch the football, and he's got great speed. And to me, Travion Henderson, I think is going to be their guy. Um, I think I could see Travion Henderson in round 2 or maybe round 3.
He's going to go in the second round. He's that good. Both those backs, Judkins and Henderson, probably Judkins ahead of him, and then Henderson. But the only thing that are reading the tea leaves here is they must believe that Christian McCaffrey is going to be healthy, because why else would you let go of Mason? I don't care that Mason wanted to leave because he wanted an opportunity. That doesn't concern me. I'm a team. I have to worry about my team. If McCaffrey was a problem, I think they would have kept Mason. He didn't get a huge contract with the Vikings, and it was a couple of years, $7 million. So if you don't think he's going to be healthy, you have to keep Mason. Also, and you could answer this question, how much did I like Guerrero? Because the reason I can't go to a running back that high is because I think what's going to happen is if they can go offensive tackle, and a lead offensive tackle, I think they will at 11. And then I think in the second round, they'll go to defensive tackle. But again, it comes to best available. But I think that's best case scenario. To get one of the backs that you're talking about, either the Ohio State kids, I think you're going to have to get them somehow in the second or the early third round, both of those guys. And is Guerrero their backup? They believe that Guerrero showed enough last year to be a backup, a guy who's so inexperienced in college, did catch the football, can catch the football. Because if so, if they think McCaffrey's healthy, which by trading Mason, I think that tells you that they do, and then Guerrero, if he showed enough, then you're looking at a third running back. And I can't take a third running back that early. And like you said, they've done better.
I don't think Guerrero's a running back.
I don't either. I agree with you. I don't think that at all. But I think that
he's a great receiver. He's a great receiver.
And he's so inexperienced in the zone game that he just doesn't have the feel for it. Maybe you can develop that. Maybe you can't. Again, you can answer that question better than I can. But in terms of just running backs in general, there's just a lot of them. And Elijah Mitchell was a 6th round pick. Matt Breida that this group got, he was a free agent. I think that they can find, in the Shanahan system, you can find backs who aren't superstar players to run it. I mean, Mason was a guy who was a free agent that they picked up. I believe that they have confidence in finding a back who fits what they do. And there are enough of them in this draft to do that, because as we're talking receivers and running backs, those guys are all great, but they have got to find themselves beef, man, on both sides of the ball. And I don't know if they have the luxury to grab a back that early.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just think that when you look at this team, to me, if every draft has a theme, some kind of a theme. What's the theme this year? I think the theme this year is this has to be almost 2 drafts for the Niners. It has to be a draft where you support Brock Purdy. So that means a receiver, O-lineman, and a damn good back or tight end, and you rebuild your defense on the fly. I think you got to do both. You got to somehow, if the Niners are going to be a playoff team this year, they're going to have to figure out a way to do both. They're going to have to support their quarterback and rebuild the D on the fly. And I like Guerrero. Guerrero caught 15 of the 16 passes they threw him last year. He's got really good ability to catch, but I think they're going to need another back. And I think they need a back that's better than Guerrero, because I think they have to pretend like the same way you have Aiyuk back. You have Aiyuk back, but you almost need to pretend that you don't, because he's probably not going to be back until at least halfway through the year. And you have CMC back, but I think you got to pretend that you don't. I think you got to pretend that you need to find a big time back, not a complimentary guy who's sort of okay, this guy, that guy. No, you need somebody who can be, maybe the best weapon on your team. They need a great player at running back. They need their Jahmyr Gibbs, That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. The thing is, and you mentioned playing to Brock, and one of the things that John Lynch mentioned today, that because he talked about Purdy, he talked about Aiyuk, those things are going to get the headlines, but he talked about being happy with the offensive line. Please remember, people, that it's lying season. It's lying season 24/7, 365 now in professional sports when you talk to GMs, but it certainly is around the draft. There's no way that John Lynch is happy putting Ben Barch at left guard. I'm sorry, he's just not. He's not happy with Jake Brendel at center. And Matt Maiocco wrote a piece today, said he was 12th best at center. He was 12th best in run blocking. He was not 12th best in pass blocking. He gave up a boatload of pressures up the middle, as did Aaron Banks. Between those two, they were just a sieve against the pass. And when you have a 6'1", barely 6'1" quarterback there, you're going to pay millions and millions of dollars to this offseason. You cannot have middle pressure. So to me, I know what John's saying, and he doesn't want to tip his hand in the draft. You don't want to say you're desperate.
This is what he said, though. He said, we like our right tackle. We like our center.
Right,
guard, we have some candidates in-house right now.
Right, but
we
remember,
will look to add in the draft, certainly.
But remember, it's lying season. So are you going to come out and say, yeah, we need a center, we need a guard, we need a tackle? You can't say those things because then the other teams are thinking, okay, the Niners, John Lynch said they need offensive line help. They do need offensive line help. Trent Williams is 37. He's going to leave after this year, I believe, and you're going to need to address left tackle at some point. You don't want a rookie out there. So I think they have to seriously look at one of the tackles. But if Campbell and Membu are gone, you're not going to reach for a Banks, I don't think. Guard wise, look, I don't know what Ben Bartch can do or Zakel or any of that kind of stuff, but so maybe they're okay. But like I said, my belief is that they're going to get a right tackle to replace Trent Williams, and they're going to move McKivitz over to left guard, and that's where they think he can actually be even better, even though they don't mind him at right tackle and his numbers aren't bad. And in my dumb mock draft, and I did this too early, I took the kid Jared Wilson from Georgia, even though he's a 1-year starter, and I don't know that you can be that and play center in the NFL right away, but the kid's a super athlete. You and I have talked about him before. And I would love to see Wilson in the mid round, maybe the third round. I'd love to see if one of those tackles could slide, move McKivitz over. And now your offensive line is done. And if you can get that done early, then all of a sudden your draft becomes all about defense. And that's really where I think they need, because you can look at the offense in the chart right now, in the depth chart. The offense is not horrid. Defensively, especially in the front seven, it's as bad as it gets. I know Nick Bosa and Nick Warner and Fred Warner are there. Nick Bosa, Fred Warner are there. Outside of that, the other 5 guys on defense that are slated to start are atrocious. I mean, it's guys that have potential in a guy like Anderson, but Drake Jackson could be a potential starter at this point. D Winters could be a potential starter in the front. Their front seven defensively they need a lot of work. And if John Lynch is going to say the draft is going to be the elixir to all of this stuff, you better get to work, pal, because there's a lot of work to be done.
Well, there's no question. There's no question. They could go defensive front their first 5 or 6 picks and be fine with me. I mean,
right. Edge. No it's edge, it's interior, it's linebacker, it's depth. It's just, it's everything.
I brought up the linebacker because, the Niners went after EJ Speed before he signed with Houston, and
that would have been a nice get.
That how big of a need is linebacker, and will they go Jalen Walker at 11? Should they? I got a guy coming on the show tomorrow, Eugene Asante from Auburn, who I just absolutely love. Love the way this kid plays. He's like a Dre Greenlaw, except he's 220 pounds. He's not 250 or 240 or whatever Dre is. But I love Asante. He's an awesome player. He was amazing in Mobile. He was great at the combine. He's like a hyperactive tackling machine, absolute tackling machine. And there's some undersized linebackers of note on day 3 of this draft. A couple more topics before we get out of here.
Sure.
John Lynch today said he expects the Purdy deal to get done before the OTAs. It's funny. Everybody had a different take on this. Some people had a take of John and the Niners don't respect Kyle Strongen, the agent for Purdy, and they're going to walk all over him and they're going to dictate to him, and this deal's not going to get done, and blah, blah, blah. Not only is this deal going to get done, I think it's going to get done literally, I would say, before this time next month. I would say this deal is done because I really believe that Brock Purdy wants to get in there before OTAs. So I would say maybe about a month from now, roughly a month from now, I think this deal gets done. I think Brock Purdy has told his agent, I will be there for OTAs. Mac Jones will not be leading my team introducing the offense when the team first gathers. So I think he's going to cut a really good deal. I think the fact that Lynch feels like, it could get done before OTAs shows that they're at least found some common ground. I think Brock's the driving force. I think he wants to get paid. I think he wants to get taken care of. I don't think he wants to play for $5 million, but I also think that he's willing to leave a little meat on the bone to build the team around him, because I think he values that aspect of this thing. So I think a deal is going to be hammered out. And I think Brock Purdy is going to be their guy long term. But when you hear it could get done before the OTAs, that's all Brock, man. There's no way. He's so competitive. There's no way in hell he's sitting this thing out, squeezing the Niners for a few extra bucks and watching Mac Jones run the team. It's just not going to happen.
No, and John Lynch, and reporter instincts kick in at some point. And well, there's two ways they kind of yin and yang each other. Kyle Shanahan is almost honest to a fault, and sometimes the powers that be down there, the PR people, have to pull Kyle back a little bit and go, dude. And then John Lynch is this optimistic guy, but when John Lynch is very careful and calculated in what he says. So when he says something is in a positive sense, then you can expect something to get done when it comes to negotiations like this. He'll tell you if something, without really telling you, if something isn't going well, and we can all read that. And he'll also do what he did today, which was he set a very positive tone for Brock Purdy, and he would not do that if he didn't think something was getting done. So I couldn't agree with you more. This is going to get done. This is going to get done earlier than we thought. Now, could things hit a snag? Yeah, it could hit a snag. But as complicated as these deals are, Krug, they're really not if you don't let egos get in the way, because it's pretty simple. The $55 million is the baseline from last year. You add the percentage up, the cap went up by a certain percentage, all these different things. And it's really not that hard. You can look at the numbers. Josh Allen took a little bit less, but look at a Trevor Lawrence example for the situation. You bump it about, he got $142 million guaranteed. Maybe Brock is at 150. We all know the magic number is the 60 million of what Dak got. I think that he's going to come in under that so that the 49ers can say, please come under 60. That's all stuff and fluff because it's AAV. So that really doesn't matter. It's about the guarantees. Really, what I'm saying is the parameters are out there for a deal. It's not overly complicated where he should come in. He should come in a couple of, like, under a Burrow, under an Allen, but above a Trevor Lawrence. And so that's what I think is going to happen. And it's not really, I know it's a big deal and it's a big check to be signing, but the numbers really are right in front of us. And the only time it takes a long time is when what happened with Brandon Aiyuk, who was just dead set that he was going to get that 30 million number. And if Brock is not dead set on wanting to get the 60, which, like I said, John Lynch wouldn't have said these things and been so optimistic had Brock Purdy, had he not felt like they had some really good negotiations and talks. Now, having said that, tomorrow, as you said, Jed's going to talk and Kyle's going to talk, and Kyle is Mr. Honesty, and Kyle's going to walk in after too many Red Bull and vodkas tonight, and he's going to be hungover, and he's going to have a Starbucks in his hand, and he's going to look really sleepy, and he's going to be cranky, and somebody like Eric Branch is going to ask a 45-second question, and Kyle's going to be pissy and go, I don't know if we're going to get a deal done. Hell, I don't even know if we're going to be alive on Sunday. So then he sets a totally different tone, and then we're talking about something totally different. But based on what Lynch said today, I think 49ers fans should be optimistic.
All right, you get three questions. One for Jed, one for John, one for Kyle.
Oh, is that a good question by you? You are a professional, man. That's a really good question. We should both play this.
Well, my first rodeo. We can cut this and turn this into a video. But
I really love this.
You have one question for each guy. What question do you want to ask each guy?
The first thing I want to ask Jed, honestly, is not so much about the money. I think I understand that. I want to ask him, was he really that personally pissed off about Brandon Aiyuk? Was because what sounded like was driving this whole Aiyuk thing was Jed just did not want to write this check. Now, I don't know if Jed would be honest about it, but I just want to know. Like, did you really want to move Brandon Aiyuk? Did you really loathe this contract? Did you feel like you got pushed into a corner? Because that's what everybody said, is that Jed York got pushed into a corner on this one. He got pushed into a corner on Bosa. He got pushed in a corner on Aiyuk, because did that precipitate all of this entire offseason? So I'd like to ask him just specifically about Aiyuk, and if that's what precipitated this entire offseason. Man, as far as John Lynch is concerned, what I'd ask Lynch is because I know this for a fact, and so do you, when and if the 49ers win a Super Bowl, John Lynch the next day will sign with Amazon or Apple or whomever it is, because he's a goal-oriented guy who wants to win a Super Bowl, check that off his list and move on, because the dude's from San Diego. He's busting his ass up here, working 24/7, 365. He really wants to be a broadcaster, but he doesn't want to do it before he finishes the deal. So I want to ask John, what did Jed tell you about why they're going, because this isn't a general manager wanting to do this. This is the owner telling the general manager this is the direction we're going. So I want to ask John what he was told by Jed. What exactly is this? Because here's why I know it. Here's why I know it's not a rebuild. Because if it was, John Lynch would be gone. He'd already be back in the broadcast booth. He'd say, "Look, I'm just here to win a championship. If I can't do that, I've accomplished everything but that. So adios." That's what I would ask John Lynch. And then Kyle. Kyle's a tough one, man. Kyle, what would I ask Kyle? I would ask him about Mac Jones, I guess. I think Mac Jones is, what did you think of Mac Jones coming out, and how do you view Mac Jones? I don't view Mac Jones as a threat to Brock Purdy at all. I don't think he's leveraging this deal or anything like that. But it is interesting that Mac Jones, there was that discussion, and I'd love to ask Kyle, was it down to Mac Jones and Trey Lance? And what do you think of Mac Jones? And is that why you brought him in? Because obviously it is. I mean, if they didn't like Mac Jones in the draft process, then why the hell did they bring him in? So those would be my three.
My question for Jed would be, what do you
the hell are you doing?
What do you view as success?
What are you doing?
What's success? If you don't win a championship, are you a successful owner? What is a successful owner? And are you a successful owner? And are you a successful owner, or do you need that sixth Lombardi to come out of your parents' shadow and
that's a good question.
Uncle's shadow and
Krug, let me ask you this. Remember when you said
we can sign the thing over to you. You can be the final decision maker. Everything could be, you're the guy, you're the guy, you're the guy. But do you really need that ring, that sixth ring, so that Dr. John York doesn't show up at practice? You know what I mean?
Great question.
When you lose 3 in a row, because he has no impact on the situation at all. So that's what
I don't think, and I want you to do the other two, but I don't think he wants to win less, because when this whole process happened, and I think it was Mike Silver who wrote the piece. When this whole process happened, one thing he said in that piece that I disagreed with, all of it was really, really good, but he intimated, or he said, I can't remember, that Jed wasn't as driven to win that last, the Super Bowl as he had been. And I don't agree with that, because that's not what I've heard. I've heard he's every bit as driven to it. But I'm going to defer to something that Mark Cuban said the other day when an ex-employee came at him. Mark Cuban said in 23 years owning the Mavericks, he made money twice. So not every owner wants to be Joe Lacob or Mark Cuban or the Dodgers and wants to win every year. Fans are under that illusion, but it's not true. All Jed is simply doing is he's probably looking at the books and saying, look, we're getting smoked every year in this whole thing. We're going to just take a financial step back, eat a bunch of money, and then we can reset this whole thing and we can still win. But it doesn't mean that he wants to win less. And I think your question is a phenomenal question. I don't think Jed wants to win less. I think he burns for the Super Bowl. But what it reminded me of when you were asking that question was, remember when he fired Harbaugh, what he said? He said, it's about winning Super Bowls around here. And Harbaugh is a great coach, but he didn't win a Super Bowl. We need to win a Super Bowl. He's always talked about it and how driven he is, and it's been so long. And see, I don't think his attitude has changed. I just think sometimes business things have to be done in the process of it. The Bills did it a couple of years ago. The Rams did it. I don't think it means he wants to win less. It's just you can't go balls to the wall, pedal to the metal every single year. Every once in a while, you have to let up and then hit it again. So that's a great question.
What the Niners are doing this offseason is absolutely the right move. It probably should have been done last offseason. The question I would have for John is, would you ever consider bringing in a proven draft consultant, a John Dorsey, a Scott McLuhan, and at least hearing their perspective on the guys that you like, just so because everybody in your room knows who the boss is, and everybody knows that it's after a while people just want to align with the boss. I had a buddy who worked for the Raiders, and he told me about this scout that worked for the Raiders, and Al Davis put the scout on the spot on a draft in a draft day meeting on draft day. And he's like, hey, who do you like? Or who do you want? And the guy looked at him and with his job on the table said, Al, I want what you want.
Ugh. What a terrible answer. I mean, seriously, that's such a terrible
That's
answer.
a terrible answer.
Don't you hate yes men? Like, no,
Yes.
man, I'm hiring you to have the balls to tell me you don't like this pick. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree with you, but you can't have a bunch of guys like that in the room, can you?
Yeah. No.
You can't.
No.
You got to have a guy going, hey, I don't like this guy, and this is why, and this is the pick. I talked to him or whatever the case. You can't have that.
No.
You know what I would love?
want what you want is not
What
good.
a terrible
So that's
answer.
my question for Lynch. There's a John Dorsey. There's a Scott McCloughan.
That's a good call.
They're not better than you. They don't know more than you, and they're not going to take your job. But if you could pay them $250,000, $250,000, and just be like, hey, John Dorsey, tell me what you think. You know who John Dorsey is? John Dorsey was the guy that showed up in Kansas City before Mahomes got drafted, and suddenly they had Mahomes. John Dorsey is a really good personnel guy, and so is Scott McCloughan. And I'm not saying they're perfect, but I would definitely want to know from Lynch if he would have the confidence in what their program is to have an outside voice come in, and would he see value in that? And then for Shanahan,
what would that hurt? Well, I mean, seriously, there's no downside to what you're describing. It's just another set of eyes. Why not? Unless you're
somebody who's really
unless you're fearful of your job, which you shouldn't be. Is just I'd want as many people as I could in that room to say, what about that? By the way, before you get to your last question, how, of all the things I would wish for in life, I know this is the dorkiest thing ever. One of the things that might be near the top is I would love the day of the draft to the end of the draft to be in a draft room. I wouldn't say a word. If I had the money, I'd pay you $1 million. I wouldn't want to go to the moon or any of those kind of things. I would want to sit maybe the last week up until the draft, just every day. I don't get to say a word. You can put one of those, zip, put whatever. I can't say a word, but just to listen. And then you can lock me in a room until the draft. Like I can't leave the room, right? So I can't say anything. No phone, no nothing. Wouldn't you just love to just be in on the conversations and scouts trying to, their guy and trying to sell their guy to somebody and how the actual process works in terms of every team is a little bit different. But I'd love to know who really does it. John and Kyle, we think that Kyle has the final word and how the scouts are in there. And I would just love to sit in there for like the week up to the draft and in the draft and see how the process is done and who says what for the Niners to see how everything works.
What you would
Wouldn't
discover
that be cool?
is that there was some veteran personnel scout who has a lot of weight, whose opinion carries a lot of weight. And I think every room has that. And you're also going to see disagreements. I'll never forget a few years ago, and it kind of came to fruition or came to memory this offseason because Milton Williams was just a Super Bowl hero. But the Eagles, they had a video in the draft day of the Eagles war room, and the Eagles had a bunch of people, and Howie Roseman trades up, and they draft Milton Williams out of Louisiana Tech. And they're going around the room, and Howie's super excited. He's shaking hands with every guy, and everybody's fired up. This guy's fired up. That guy's fired up. He gets to Tom Donahoe, who's a white-haired individual, used to work for the Buffalo Bills, and is a veteran of many, many drafts. And you could tell Donahoe didn't want him. Donahoe wanted the other guy. And Donahoe was like, ugh. And then Howie goes, and they're going back. And then Donahoe's like, he kind of, get out of here. And Howie was right. Donahoe's guy was not as good as Milton Williams. Milton Williams just got paid a ton of money. And it's those kinds of moments that you're going to have guys that you like, respect, and maybe love.
Yeah.
And respect and love their opinion. And maybe you seek out their opinion, but they may have an opinion on a player that's not your opinion. And, it isn't, there's no consensus building.
Right. Well, and that's what makes you nervous about them going all in for this draft is that, look, there's no denying that from Debo to Warner to Kittle to Greenlaw to Purdy and Jennings and all these different guys and Elijah Mitchell and picking up a guy like Jordan Mason, they've had a lot of hits, just boom, 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 boom. But then any team that, Reuben Foster and Trey Lance, and I mean, they've had not maybe as many misses, but they've had some tremendously bad misses. Trey Lance and costing you 2 first-round picks in 22 and 23, and Reuben Foster trading up, and they've had some picks, the 3rd-round running backs, Dante Pettis. Like they haven't had like one bad. It's round to round kind of a thing, and they've hit on some of the best mid-round picks in the history of the game. There's never been a 7th round pick better than Brock Purdy. I'd have to go through 5th-round picks, but Kittle's going to the Hall of Fame as a 5th-rounder. Warner's going to the Hall of Fame as a 3rd-rounder. I mean, these guys are great picks.
Greenlaw was round 5.
Greenlaw
was round 5.
Right, but they've had so many damn misses, especially in the first round. I mean, Aiyuk and Bosa were the only 2 to make it to a second contract for them out of the first round. So it's a really tough proposition because they have hit some home runs and they have struck out on 3 pitches. I mean, it's just, and there's very little in between for this team. Like that guy was, Diamador Lenore was a great pick. It's very rarely are they picking a guy where you go, he's okay. I mean, they either just knock it out of the park or they strike out on 3 pitches looking,
Here's
Crazy.
my Kyle Shanahan question. Kyle, how many years should I give you to win a Super Bowl?
Good question.
How many? Reed got 13 years in Philly, didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
They chased him out. He went to Kansas City. He won there. Kyle's in year 9. Kyle, you want 10 years? You want 12? You want 13? You want 15? At what point do we get that 6th Lombardi? How many years should I go with you? How many years should I give you to win that 6th Lombardi before I should yank your sheets and go to somebody else?
The thing that's so tough about that is when they're healthy, right? When they're healthy, they go to NFC Championship games and Super Bowls. When they're not, they crash and burn. There is very little in between. And let's go past him building this thing. So it's not that I'm not going to count because it counts on his record, but 17, 18, I mean, those teams were shit and they didn't have a lot of talent. So he had to bring it in. But from 19 on, it's go to a Super Bowl, bomb because of injuries. 21, go to an NFC Championship game. 22, same thing. 23, if Brock gets hurt, or 22, Brock gets hurt. 23, you go to the Super Bowl. 24, you bomb because of injuries. I think you bring up a great point. I've never been an advocate of firing at all Kyle Shanahan. In fact, a lot of times I found it laughable. But at some point, the one thing about Kyle that I think is very open game is that he has to keep the pedal to the metal, and he's too conservative for his own good. Some of the decisions he's make, we can go back to the Super Bowl. It's not the 4th downs, it's the 3rd downs. It's not setting up for the 4th downs. I don't want him to be Dan Campbell or some crazy thing like that. But I just think Kyle is such a great offensive mind that why aren't they better, with 4th down situations? Why weren't they better last year? I know that they lost McCaffrey, but that's not everything. He got very predictable in the red zone, the short yardage running situations, those kind of things. For as big of an offensive genius as he is, and he is because everybody's running a version of his offense, some way of it, sometimes, man, you got to scratch your head. And look, Andy Reid went to Kansas City and got a guy named Patrick Mahomes, so that makes a bit of a difference. And I fear that Kyle Shanahan would leave this organization, like you said, after about 10 years. And one of the reasons I say that is because, and this actually is a basketball thing, is I remember Mike Dunleavy Sr. got fired by the Blazers, and I was a beat reporter for the Blazers. And he gathered us together and said, I'm getting fired today. And one of the things he said is, and he had been there about 8 years, and this is the Rasheed Wallace, Bonzi Wells, Damon Stoudemire, Scottie Pippen, Steve Smith. I mean, they had a ton of talent in Portland then, and they were losing to the Lakers. And he said, I'm getting fired because they've heard every damn speech I've got. I've given him the Newt Rockney. I've given him the, I've run the gamut on speeches. I got nothing left. And at some point, you just have to make a change. I'm not saying that's the point right now. But like you said, if this thing is elongated and they don't nail the draft, all of a sudden John Lynch is going, why am I staying? I'm here to win a championship. I could go to TV and make my life a lot easier, and I'm really good at it. And Kyle Shanahan says, you know what, it is probably time for a change and all those kind of things. Even though Kyle Shanahan would have a job before he hung up the phone if the Niners let him go, at some point, my point in bringing up the Dunleavy thing is you need another voice, and that's just the way it is.
There's been so much talk about this offseason. Oh, this offseason and all the losses and all the players that they've lost and this and that. Here's who they've lost. This is the list. Brandon Allen, Aaron Banks, Malik Collins, Josh Dobbs, John Feliciano, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Leonard Floyd, Dre Greenlaw, Javon Hargrave, Charlie Heck, Talanoa Hufanga, Jordan Mason, Nick McLeod, Elijah Mitchell, Jalen Moore, Tabor Pepper, Debo Samuel, Eric Saubert, Mooney Ward, Rock Yassin, Isaac Yadam, in alphabetical order. if you could bring one of those guys back, who would it be? But if I told you could bring two back, you would say you don't want to bring two back.
That's a good point. I think I mean, Dre Greenlaw is the obvious one. The second one would be, and I know this is unfair, but we're just playing a game here. I would like to bring back 2023 Mooney Ward. I don't want 2024 Mooney, and he had off the field issues. So I feel for the guy, but his game on the field had slipped miserably, and actually Renardo Green was better. But your point is very well taken in that they lost, and people are confusing this. They lost a lot of quantity. They didn't lose a lot of quality, because the reality is like you bring up Hafunga and everybody thinks of 22 or returning the punt against Green Bay. But reality is Mustafa was going to beat him out anyway. Mooney Ward, who played in 2024, wasn't as good as Renardo Green. We can go on down the line on all those guys that got Leonard Floyd. I'm telling you, was atrocious other than his 8.5 sacks. He played 600 other snaps and he sucked ass. He was like the 100th ranked edge guy. I didn't even know there was 100 edge guys in the league. That according to Pro Football Focus. He just wasn't very good. So same thing with Malik Collins. He was just a guy. He was much better in with the Texans. But what the Niners were asking him to do was assume a bigger role. Like if Malik Collins is part of a 4-tackle rotation with 4 quality tackles, then Malik Collins is fine. But Malik Collins had to play a ton of snaps last year, and that's not who he is. So I didn't have a major problem outside of Dre because they didn't have a replacement. Now they don't have a replacement for Malik Collins or for Leonard Floyd, but their performance was below average. So when you get a guy, and probably get a guy in the draft, they're not going to have to be that good to replace that production.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really bummed that they don't have Greenlaw, and then this list really illustrates the fact that I don't want any of these guys. I mean, Malik Collins and Hargrave have to be replaced. That's your interior defensive tackle, combo on your defense. Those guys matter a ton. So you're going to have replacements. But yeah, I mean, I'm really frustrated that Greenlaw didn't come back, but I'm really happy that everybody else is gone. So, it is what it is. Last topic, we will finish with this one, and this is interesting to me. I'm a big fan of Bill Barnwell
of ESPN.
Yeah, I think Bill Barnwell is just a really interesting guy. He writes things, and then I'll read it. I'll be like, damn, that's exactly what I think. I mean, he has this way of cutting right to the chase. He's just so good. He's so good at what he does. Anyway, he does a mock draft annually where it's really awesome too. He involves every single team in the first round in a trade. So basically everybody makes a trade instead of making their pick. And he had the Niners at 11 making this trade. And it's kind of an interesting trade. It would be the Niners sending the 11th pick in the draft and their 4th round pick, number 113 overall, to the Dolphins. The Niners would then get the Dolphins pick in the first round, which is 13. So they'd essentially move back to 2 picks. And they would get the former Miami Hurricane edge rusher, Jalen Phillips, who tore an Achilles. Let's see. He had 22 ACL. He had 22 sacks over his first 2.5 seasons, but he tore an Achilles in 2023, tore his ACL in 2024. So he's, you could make a case that he's somewhat damaged goods, but he was a pretty accomplished pass rusher. I believe he might have been involved in the play as well. That hurt Jimmy G. Maybe not. He might not have been. I thought he was, but nonetheless, what do you think of that trade? Would you trade the 11th pick down 2 spots and include a 4th to get Jalen Phillips?
First of all, I think if one of their key guys isn't there at 11 that they love, they are going to move back, because I think you start to see the value in this draft in the depth of it, especially along the defensive line. Phillips just makes me nervous, even though I think he's a really good player. You just mentioned 2 major injuries, Achilles, which is explosion, right? And that's your edge guy is going to lose some explosion because he's got an Achilles injury. And then the next year he blows a knee. You know who that's like? Klay Thompson. Thompson went Achilles knee, or did he go knee Achilles? He went knee Achilles because the knee got hurt against Toronto, and then he blew the Achilles out in playing ball at UCLA. So he went knee Achilles. it just robs you of a lot. And as I look at Clay, he's never come back from that, even though, he's still Clay, but he's not the player. And then what you got to look at what position each guy plays to how they're going to come back. Jalen Phillips is, I think I'm doing this off the top of my head. He's about 6'4", 6'5", 265. I mean, he's the perfect build for an edge guy. And when Miami took him, and I believe they took him in the middle of the first round, that was really a good player. But remember, he got hurt at UCLA.
Yeah.
He got hurt at Miami.
Hurt as a freshman.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
he got, so his whole career, UCLA, Miami, and now into the pros, he's gotten hurt every single step of the way. So that, even though I understand the rationale and I don't hate it, because if Jalen Phillips is healthy, you're not going to be able to get him for basically moving back 2 spots, and so you wouldn't be able to do that. But so yeah, are they willing to take a chance? Because here's something that you've pointed out, I think very astutely, which is, look, I understand, John Lynch, you have 11 picks, and maybe you're going to have 12, 13, 14 picks. Who knows by the end of this whole thing? But you need at least a couple of defensive linemen. You need an offensive lineman, at least one, if not two. You need an edge guy. They're really light, thin on the edge side of things. I don't expect anything of Drake Jackson. So now what are you going to do on the edge? They don't have anybody opposite him. So would you take a flyer on him? You might, but the red flags are all over the place, because not only, it's Achilles, it's knee, but then he was at UCLA first, then at Miami, and he's been injured every step along the way.
It's really, really a tough thing. Who are you leaning to right now at 11? Who would you like to see there at 11? Or who would you pick at 11? For me, it's Walter Nolan. I think I would go Walter Nolan. I realize that's early, but Greg Cosell, I saw, did a whole breakdown of the defensive tackle class the other day. He says he thinks Walter Nolan's the best defensive tackle in the class. He says he's got quickness and power, that he can win a lot of different ways. And I think that's where the need is. I think that's where the value is. I think I would try to trade back and see if I could get him, but that's the guy I'd go after.
Yeah, I think I've read so many damn mock drafts just like you have. I just can't pass one up. It's like crack, you see it on there, and you're like, I gotta put, like the other day, like the day that Mel Kiper Jr. and Daniel Jeremiah released their mocks on the same day, I think my head blew off. But then I think Matt Miller did like a 7-rounder, and I think he had Nolan going in the second round of the Niners, and I don't see that. He was like 43rd pick, and I'm just like, there's no way that guy's getting there. If that were the case, that would just be the luck of all luck. I would love one of those offensive tackles to get there. They're not going to get there. I just don't see it. There's too much value there. I would then try to trade down, because I think then all of a sudden they all start running together. Like you said, like I think you could get Nolan at 17. I think you can get, but here's the other side of it. Mel Kiper, him and Bill Tobin, was it Tobin? All those years ago with the Colts, who got all pissed off about Tobin. Value of the pick, right?
What is it? I don't need to take who Mel Kiper tells me I need to take.
That was so good.
Who's Mel Kiper anyway?
It was Trent. They took Trev Alberts, and he thought they should have took Trent Dilfer, which both turned out to be bombs.
And the Colts have no idea what the draft's about. This is when Mel was really going.
So
now
good.
He's like totally.
He's chilled out.
He's way
but he always talks about value. It's when you get the player. I understand that. But if the Niners have a far and away, tremendous grade on Walter Nolan, then that's who they're going to take. And a lot of people do like him. So I could see them doing that, even though the defensive line is incredibly deep. I still think they could just say, you know what, that's who we like. And so we don't know what their board looks like. So I'm with you. The other guy I did it, like I said, I did a mock draft a couple of days ago and used PFF as kind of the vehicle for it and everything like that. And I traded down to 17. I didn't want to get behind Seattle 16. I didn't want to get behind Seattle because Seattle has a lot of similar needs as what the 49ers do. And so I wanted to stay ahead of them. And I took Grant at 16. And I still think that was a little bit light early for him. But the one thing about him is I would be praying that he's Dexter Lawrence of the Giants. Like if you're getting Dexter Lawrence at that point, he controls the inside of the defensive line. He's the best interior defensive lineman out there. And I've heard those comps, and I don't know that he's that. But if a 340-pound man can move like that, and Dexter Lawrence can, then all of a sudden, whoever's next to him along the defensive line is fairly irrelevant, because you can't move Dexter Lawrence. And so he pushes the pocket in the pass game, and he maintains the run game almost by himself. And he's so good that then Nick Bosa's not doubled as much. You put somebody next to him. They don't have to be a superstar. They just have to be solid. And then, you look at the rest of the defensive line. So I don't know what you think of Kenneth Grant. I don't know that I would take him 11. I think that's a little bit early. But among those defensive linemen, and there's a deep group, he's different in terms of, what he could bring to the table. If he's Dexter Lawrence, that's a whole different game. If he's not, then yeah, that's not a great pick. But I keep hearing Dexter Lawrence. I keep
love
hearing
Kenneth
Dexter
Grant.
Lawrence comps on him. So
The only reason I would take Kenneth Grant over Walter Nolan possibly would be because of durability. I think Kenneth Grant has incredible durability, where I'm a little worried about Nolan. But Kenneth Grant's 6'3", 330, and moves like a guy who's about 280.
I saw some of his swim moves too. I'm a dork, and I was watching his film the other day, and he's got a swim move over that, I'm not kidding you, Krug, at least 10 times I saw. And some of these guys are going to be mailmen, next year or whatever after they graduate college, but still, where the defensive lineman was like, how did 340 pounds just get out of my way? Like, he literally swam the guy, and the guy was looking for him. Like, where did he go? Where did 340 pounds go? He was so quick on the swim that it's like, again, these are NFL offensive linemen. It's going to be a little different against Quentin Nelson and guys like that, but still, the guy looks pretty quick and pretty good. And so if you can be a middle penetrator and run stuffer, which Lawrence is, and you got an opportunity to get that would be pretty special for what the 49ers need.
There's a couple of things I'd love to see in this draft. I'd love to see the 49ers go after a player like the North Carolina guard, who I think could be a fullback. I'd like to see the Niners.
I sent you that the other day. Did you see that? Was that Matt Miller? Matt Miller did have Willie Lampkin.
Willie Lampkin.
He had
I want
to
to see
the Niners.
I want to see Willie Lampkin. Matt Miller and I are both hot to trot on Willie Lampkin. I want to see Willie Lampkin at center or at guard or at fullback for the Niners. I just really believe Willie Lampkin is going to be a great short yardage player. I want to see a veteran kicker like a Nick Folk. I don't want to. I want a 40-year-old kicker who's been there and done that. And then I want to invest either a 7th round pick or an undrafted signing in this guy right here. Have you seen this guy?
You love this guy.
This is Desmond Watson, who's 450 pounds. I mean, if they're not going to outlaw the tush push, then why wouldn't you want to have this guy? Why would
put him at fullback and just push the quarterback in?
No. I'm just saying put him at nose guard against the tush push.
I see what you're saying. I got you.
He's a nose guard for Florida. Put him at nose guard. He's 450 pounds and negate their fucking tush push with 450 pounds of Desmond Watson.
The designated tush push.
And then then hand this guy the ball. Hand this guy the ball on the goal line like the fridge. This guy's 460 pounds and he's athletic.
My God, he's a massive dude.
Why not? I mean, you got a big roster. You got a roster. You can house one roster spot for this 460 pound behemoth and run this guy on the goal line. And if not, take Brendel out and let this guy be the center on the goal line. I mean, wouldn't you, if you got Brock Purdy on 3rd and goal or 4th and goal from the 1, and you have Desmond Watson snapping him the ball and running forward, he basically could hide underneath him and just it's an automatic. No,
I just don't want Jake Brendel and Kyle Juszczyk in that situation.
I'm dreaming of a backfield of like
this guy in Lampkin,
a power back, Willie Lampkin as the fullback, and Desmond Watson as the center.
Oh, I would love to see that. Just because I'd like to see your head blow off. You just
it would be awesome. It'd be freaking awesome. It'd be amazing.
I would.
And then do it right, and then shove it on Sirianni. Yeah. Niners get a big power back.
That would be hilarious.
Willie Lampkin at fullback. They get Desmond Watson as the center, and they give Philly a little tush push dose of their own tush push medicine.
I just, you know what? I just hope so badly, just because like when Jake Moody was picked a few years ago and we were on the air and I just screamed out, no, I hope so badly that you're on the air and the 49ers take Willie Lampkin. It will be an amazing moment. And I hope they take him, because then I know you're going to do an interview with him. And I know that, I don't know if he can even be a guard with his reach, but he could certainly, it sounds like, could be a center. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, kid out of North Carolina is like 5'10", 280.
Yeah.
But he dominated. He played at a lower division. What was that? North Carolina, AT&T or something. Then he played at North Carolina. And then he played at the Senior Bowl. And even though he's like 5'10", 275 or whatever he is, the guy like dominated guys still. And he's just, you've got all these numbers and everything, and everything says Duke does not compute. But yet, as you said, I looked at Matt Miller's 7-round long mock, and he had him in the 7th round of the Niners. I don't remember if it was the 2nd or 3rd pick
of
the 7th round.
I sent Matt a note. I sent him a note.
Did?
Yeah. I'm like, because he's in my phone. I just booked him a few weeks ago. So what did I send him a note? Let me see. Yeah, I sent him a note. I said, Matt, great 49er mock. I hope you're right on Lampkin and Riley Leonard to San Francisco. He said, me too. Lampkin is my draft crush. Yeah. I said, he's a monster, man. Long arms. I think he'd be an amazing Niner fullback. So
I think the Lampkin thing is beyond the hilarious. They've got to take him. And if they don't, I'm going to be so pissed. And if somebody else gets him, I'm going to be so pissed. But I'm interested in where somebody takes him, because there's never been a guy at his side. Now, years and years ago, when offensive linemen obviously weren't gigantic, when they were like 6'2", 245, that was different. I'm talking about in the modern era, there has never been a player at like 5'10", 280 that they've taken seriously as an offensive lineman. But like you said, at every level, and the Senior Bowl practices, he did it. And
not only did he do it,
kind of a freak.
Gray Zabel, who's
North Dakota State.
No, this was the North Dakota State offensive lineman, and a lot of people really love Gray Zabel, right? They think, oh man, Gray Zabel, he can play center, he can play tackle, he can play guard, he's everything. He's got long arms. He's got shorter arms than Willie Lampkin, who's 5'10". So take it for what it's worth. Ray Endeman says, Larry, Desmond Watson didn't go to the combine, but he had more reps on the bench than any defensive tackle at the combine. See, that's what I said. I saw that as well. I thought this guy was just a gigantic marshmallow. Dude, he's not. He had 36 reps of 225 on the combine. So it's not like this guy's just some guy with boobs. He's out there. He's sitting there. This guy's strong. I hope Kevin
gets that as a drop.
This guy's
like that guy's some guy with boobs.
No, he's not just a guy in Gainesville with a large rack.
Remember that, like 6th grade, you'd have one kid that was like overdeveloped, and you'd be in the locker room like, dude, that guy's got a rack.
In need of the manzier.
Exactly.
No, I'm not saying he needs the bro, but
bro.
But this guy is 36 reps of 225. Dude, and he's 460 pounds. Put this guy on the freaking field. I mean, I want to see this guy.
I would love to see that tush push. Put him in the nose guard.
You have a kicker, some teams have a kicker and a long snapper and like a second kicker, and you've got all kinds of special teamers. Find room for a guy who's 460 pounds. Run him on the goal line as a running back, and put him at nose guard against the tush push, and negate what the Eagles have. I mean, especially if you're going against an Eagles team. Could you imagine? You're 295 pounds. But you look across the line, and there's Desmond Watson. He's 446 pounds. And you're like, dude, I'm going to move this guy. You're not moving him at all.
No.
He's throwing you back like a tissue paper.
Plus, I got to look at the cafeteria. That cafeteria of the Niners is amazing. I wonder what they would do with him. They would just be like, oh, my God, we got to hire another chef just for this guy.
He would make – the Eagles have that Jordan Davis.
Yeah.
He would make Jordan Davis.
Oh, I know.
Look small. I mean, Jordan Davis, be like, bro, look at you, dude.
I'd like to see him next to like Grant's like 6'4", 330. I mean, he'd make him look small. I mean, my God, man.
Be amazing.
Ridiculous.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to our sponsors tonight. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krueger Show. Thanks to, of course, Sharp Corner, Sports Cards, and Collectibles. And, of course, our spring training sponsors who have been fantastic for us. Thanks to Claw Daddy Arcades. He's a great follow on Instagram at Claw_Daddy_Arcades. Find a location near you. And also thanks to LearnKey Upskill Academy, online learning platform designed to get you job ready in 6 months or less. Great company. There are links in the description for all of our sponsors. Let's hit the supers and then we'll bolt for the door. We've got this one from Todd K. He says, love you boys. Shout out Krug. Where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? To bed? I'm going to bed.
I love Todd. He's the best. He is the best.
Where are you going to go? Who are you going to call? Oh, okay. No, that's Ghostbusters. All right, Thang Dang. Larry, you seem
Dang,
to
dang,
want
dang, dang.
Jalon Walker over everyone else, even Mason Graham. Well, here's the thing. I'm a real believer that when you have the best athleticism and the best brain, you're the best. And I kind of feel like Jalon Walker kind of reminds me a lot of Patrick Willis in that he's physically totally dominant, and yet he's also kind of mentally dominant. So when you're mentally and physically dominant, you're pretty much a no doubter. I think Willis was a very sure thing, very much a sure thing, and I think Jalon Walker is similar. He's just
Where
such
do
a
you
great
play
player.
him? What do you do with him?
I would play him on first and second down as a stacked linebacker. And then on occasional third downs, I would blitz him from his linebacker spot. And on occasional third downs, I would line him up at defensive end and take, my defensive end and maybe move him inside.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, he'd be a
I look
third
for some
down.
pieces. As long as you have a plan with somebody like that, I wouldn't have an issue. I don't disagree with anything you just said there. Tweeners make me a little bit nervous, and I just don't know what he is.
Yeah.
I love off-ball guys. Okay, you're an off-ball guy. You're a Willis, or you're a blitzer, or you're a. But then again, if you look, and you said this a little bit before, I mean, Dallas has a piece that I think has turned out to be pretty good that they need to give a big contract extension to, and Micah Parsons, and they position him now in a pretty similar way every time. But when he was a rookie or his first couple of years in the league, they would move him around quite a bit. He'd be inside, he'd be outside, and they would just whatever was the advantageous matchup, that's what they would do. So you can have chess pieces on defense. It's just you've got to be able to figure out what it is. I'm not saying this is what this guy is, but I remember when the Cardinals took the Cardinals? Yeah, the Cardinals took Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson, and they never figured out what he was. So he's this tremendous athlete.
He's a free agent right now as we speak, I believe.
And he's a top 10 pick, and it was great. But is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? Is he an edge guy? Like they never figured out what he was in the pros, and so you just have to decide. Okay, this is what he's going to be, and go with it. I'm not saying that's what he is. I'm just simply saying that you got to figure out how you're going to use the guy and make sure he fits within your defense.
I think this guy's Hassan Reddick. He's like a 240-pound stack back.
And remember when he first came in, they tried to play him just as an off-ball linebacker, and then when they figured out he was an edge, then he took off.
Well, who kind of I think maybe be interesting to see Jamin Davis. Jamin Davis was drafted as a stack backer with the Commanders. He didn't really show many instincts. What did they do? They put him at defensive end, and he kind of came alive, and he really played some of his best ball. I could see something like that too. Joseph Ehrenberg, I feel CMC is going to be flexed out a lot this year. Yeah, I mean, unless they get a receiver, and otherwise, but it's a loaded running back draft. I'll tell you the guy that I really could. The more I watch this guy's film, the more I see the Niners, and he's not. I don't know if he's going to be a running back with the Niners. He's a running back in college. There's a running back at SMU named Brashard Smith. And he's 5'10", 195 pounds, nothing to call home about size-wise. But he's so freaking electric, and he's such a freaking amazing playmaker that this guy could be a receiver, he could be a return man, he could be a running back, he could be a third down back. He's just an awesome weapon. And a lot of people have him going in the 6th round. That would be a guy that would be very, very good fit for them. Jawan says, to be honest, if y'all haven't watch the Willie Lampkin tape. Bro is a beast. Best 6th round tape. Yeah, he does. He's a monster. There's no question about it.
You're preaching the choir, bro.
Yeah, seriously.
You're preaching the choir.
Willie Lampkin. Oh my God. I mean, he's my draft crush for sure. Brock 408. Lud Wilmore Flores.
He's giving me shit because two guys at the beginning of the year, I was like, well, even before his first that bat where he hit the home run on opening day.
Yeah,
you were here. We were all in the same room. We were doing bottom of the pint, and they go, God, please pinch hit. Like, I don't care. Put Matos in there. He's terrible. And then Flores hit another home run tonight, and he's got 3 home runs, and he had 4 all of last year. And Bob Melvin was like, just has to do with his health. I'm like, shut up, Bob. He stinks. He's old. He's out. And all of a sudden, he has 3 home runs. So I fully acknowledge that Flores is on fire. I was right. I was wrong. Bob was right. But there's a long way to go.
Wilmer.
He's awesome right now. He's killing it.
Dom Peralta. Great show, Krug in London. Congrats for launching Bottom of the Pint. Y'all rock. Oh, yeah, by the way, John, I went to Lenardi's yesterday, and I bought me three.
I love Lenardi's, by the way.
Three Pliny the Elders at $6 a bottle, by the way.
Worth it.
$6 a bottle. So I spent $18 on 3 Pliny the Elders for Friday's opening day. Because, I mean, it's one thing for Bottom of the Pint to drink regular beer, but it's opening day at home.
Yeah.
You got to do a little something special.
Well, and I can't bring the Coronas again. I got so much shit for drinking those citrus Coronas. Like, people were just on me. They were calling it a lady beer. They were calling it a senor, because it's a Mexican beer. They were calling it a senorita beer. Like, I was catching so much grief about it. In fact, the next day, let's see, we did that on Friday, right?
Yeah.
Thursday. And then I did a show Friday morning, and people were like giving me crap about it. And they're like, start chugging beer. So it was like 10:30 in the morning. I'm like, well, don't judge me. And and I had to chug 2 more of those beers on my show. And I put them into pint glasses and chugged them. And actually, you know what? They weren't terrible as morning beers, because they have like a citrus, almost an orange juice taste to them.
Yeah,
so it felt like I was chugging orange juice
or something.
But I have to get different beer, because it was just a little too sweet, and people were giving me a ton of grief, and they were thinking that they were wine cooler. Anyway,
join us Friday.
You bring up a good point. We gotta have good beers. Yeah, you gotta have good beers.
Gotta get good beer, especially opening day. Bottom of the Pint, Giants opening day on Friday. John and I will be with you. It'll be another outstanding.
That was a good time. That was a good time.
It was a good time. It's going to take off. Silent says fixing the O-line would help more than any rookie wide receiver. I probably agree with you there, but the guys who touch the ball do matter. Thomas Norton. Hey, Krug, love the show.
Norton.
You're going to blow up. Oh, okay. 3, 2, 1.
Okay. Krug's blowing up, man.
I'm blowing up. Silent says, how many more quarterback injuries and failed third and shorts before the front office and coaches admit that the O-line isn't steady? Maybe Lynch meant steadily mediocre. Yeah, I mean,
it's lying season.
When I saw him say that, I was like,
it's lying season.
John. Come on.
He's not going to say that they hate their offensive line and they're going to the offensive line. They're going to go deep offensive line. I have a very good feeling that they don't hate McKivitz. I'll tell you that. If people think they hate McKivitz, they don't. And they don't. Obviously, like Dom, and obviously they like Trent, but they know Trent is near the end of the line, and this could be it. And this stuff on Brendel, I'm telling you, because Krug, you know tape better than anybody. I don't care what Pro Football Focus does a really, really nice job, and they are generally on point with a lot of the things that they do. When I watch the Niners play, Jake Brendel is on his ass way too much. And when you have a quarterback that's barely 6'1", you cannot have middle pressure, and he allows middle pressure constantly. And, everyone wants to bitch and moan about the kind of season Brock had. It's really hard to throw the ball when you can't see where you're throwing the ball.
Well, and he's underpowered. And against the DJ Readers of the world, he just gets owned, and you can't get owned.
Well, look at the defensive line of the Rams. The Cardinals went out and got Josh Sweat. The Seahawks got Byron Murphy last year, re-signed Jaron Reed. They're going to go more to the defensive line because that's what Mike McDonald does. You've got to win in division first. And the Rams overwhelm your offensive line with their defensive line. And Seattle's going heavy to their defensive line. And you have Jonathan Gannon, who's a defensive guy with the Cardinals. You can't walk into next year. There's a lot of places they need to get better. There's no question. And the defensive line is just, they don't have any bodies. But in terms of the offensive line, what John Lynch said today is all nice and well and good, but it's lying season. Now we are, as of tomorrow, April is the month of the draft. He is not going to come out and say, damn, our own line sucks. We're going deep O-line in the draft, because everybody is going to go, oh, okay. Because let's say, just for the sake of our conversation here, that, Membu or Campbell drops and they're sitting there they're sitting there at 10 maybe. The Bears pick at 10. All of a sudden, there's going to be teams, if he says that, who's trying to get ahead of the 49ers. And I still believe there were going to be teams who don't believe a damn word, because you shouldn't at this point, that John Lynch just said. And they're going to go out, they're going to go up, and they're going to try to get one of those tackles ahead of the Niners, because they know damn well that the Niners need a tackle.
The good news is John Lynch may have been lying about his like for the offensive line.
That's probably.
Silence says Desmond Watson is the whole damn pantry. Yeah, I mean, he's just amazing. That's an amazing dude. He's an amazing dude.
If they picked Lampkin in like the 6th round or 7th round, and then pick that guy up as a free agent,
And then
I
like
think your head
Taj
might blow
Brooks,
off.
you get a big power back.
Yeah.
And you just said, you know what? We're going to go
Texas Tech.
power. It'd be awesome. Claudaddy Arcade's in the house. He says, can't wait for you two to talk Giants on Friday. Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
That's a fun time. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
if you missed the first one, we had a great time.
We
man.
had a great time. Claudaddy Arcades again. He says citrus Corona, kind of like canned champagne.
No, it was. See, I didn't
like
know
Boone's,
that this citrus
wine.
Corona would be such a controversial topic. But if I had a couple on a boat or something, it would be fine. But I shouldn't have bought a 12-pack to drink during the Giants game because it just became a little much, and then it just took on a life of its own. And a lot of citrus, a lot of citrus. Yeah,
all right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to John. John, tell people how they can where you're at, where they can find you, what you do on your channel, and tell people. Everybody, we got 1,250 people sitting here watching the show right now. If you've yet to like and subscribe here, please do. Go over to John's channel, hit like and subscribe over at John's channel as well. John, tell them about it.
Yeah, John Lund Unleashed. Just like if you see that logo, then you'll know you're in the right place. John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. Also, I have a mock draft right now at johnlundunleashed.com that you can make fun of. So go ahead and check those things out. And as always, Krueger, I appreciate you, man. You are the man.
Oh, dude,
You're the man.
Follow this guy. This guy puts out great content. I wouldn't be streaming as much as I am with John Lund if he wasn't outstanding. Check out his channel. He's putting out great stuff. Guys, have a great night. Tomorrow morning, we're getting the Krug Show revved up early in the morning. Why? Jed York's going to talk in West Palm Beach. Kyle Shanahan's going to talk in West Palm Beach. We're going to do reports immediately after, bringing you all of the information. That is coming up tomorrow on the Krug Show. No Niners Nightly tomorrow because of Giants baseball. Raj and I will stream tomorrow night, though, and we'll talk a little bit more Niners then. For John, I'm Larry. Have a great night. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon'